that you also work with the schools. You do counseling and residential treatments in private practice. You have a career. You have working serving the public school area. And how do you do that with the public schools?
So we're both the title is intervention counselor.
Intervention counselor.
So we both are very fortunate that we get to work, one-on-one with students and support them throughout the school day, who might be encountering an emotional, struggle throughout the day. And we also get to do groups and that sort of thing. So
you work within the public school space?
Right.
Okay. Very good. Can I ask you a question? I'm just wondering, with many years of experience that both of you have, and obviously I have researched some about the anxious generation. What do you see the trend being different, seeing your clients today versus 20 years ago plus?
I'll go first. I think for me, what I'm seeing is a lot of parenting. Let's just say not a balance of parenting with their children. A lot of, well, I told you to do this, and the parent is parenting like they know how, like they were raised, but it's not working with this generation. This generation is totally rewired differently.
Okay.
So yeah.
How about you, Annette?
Yeah. First of all, I am so thankful to be able to work with the youth of today. Bright, intelligent, compassionate, just great kids. And yet there is a difference, right? And I believe that difference the onus is on the parents. And so that's one of the reasons that we're having this workshop, is because we want to come along beside parents. We want to help them analyze in terms of digital usage, what's going on in terms of their family, in terms of digital usage. And are they satisfied with that? Are they seeing anything lacking? Are they seeing any struggles or things come up? And if so, then we want to partner with them and help them come up with a plan to make change. In terms of, definitely anxiety is a greater force. School avoidance is a greater force, in terms of what's going on. And I don't want to jump too far in advance, but I think to really talk about this book, there are some facts that Jonathan Haidt starts out with in the very beginning of the book. He hits us, he calls it the tidal wave. And when you think about a tidal wave, a tidal wave is something that, you almost can't stop, right? It's huge. And when we've talked about this, we feel like it's a tsunami, right?
Tsunami.
And so if you don't mind, I want to start out and just share a few facts.
Go ahead.
Would that be okay?
Please.
Anita and I both
Can
will.
everybody hear us over there? Can everybody hear us? Okay, it's important because this is a very important subject, and I wanted to make sure, because it's affecting not only the parents, but we also have so many parents that are separated from each other. So we have the counseling, and I want to hear more about your juvenile justice system and all this. So this is important. So please go ahead. Thank you. You're listening to Alexandra and Friends at the meeting place. Please watch us on the first and last Saturday of every month. Alexandra and Friends. Watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and any social media you're on. Thank you.
So I want to hit you with some facts, okay? So from 2010 to 2020, depression in girls went up 145%. For boys, 161%.
Wow.
Now that is huge.
That is huge.
That is something worth taking note of. Anxiety. Kids today say that 37% say that they feel almost always or either always anxious. I can't help but pause after that. I want you to take it in. This is important information. Now, here's a telling statistic. In terms of anxiety prevalence, but by age, so between 2010 and 2020 again, the age group of 18 to 25-year-olds, anxiety, as self-reported, increased 139%. Now, ages 26 to 34, it increased 103%.
My goodness.
Ages 35 to 49, it increased 52%.
Wow.
Ages 50 plus, it increased 8%. Now I want to throw this out to the audience, okay? What do you notice about those different age groups?
The pressure.
What
Yes.
about the differences in those statistics of those age groups?
The pressure of the youth today.
Yes, the pressure of the youth today.
The pressure of the youth today.
So the highest numbers, 139%, was in that youngest group, ages 18 to 25. And then those numbers went down, even though they're significant, right? Any increase in anxiety or depression is significant, but they continue to go down. And so Jonathan Haidt asked the question, why? Why is it? Everyone's living in the same world. So if and this was pre-COVID, all right? These stats are pre-COVID, so we can't blame it on COVID. We try to blame everything on COVID, right? And not to say that it didn't impact our mental health, but that's not these statistics, right? And so what was taking place? And we're going to get into this, but some commonalities was the significance of when the iPhone came out in 2010, the significance of when social media and paired technology began to really take place, which was 2012-ish, 13-ish, that time, right?
Yep.
And I know, Anita, go ahead and share a few of those other statistics that Jonathan Haidt hits us with at the very beginning.
The emergency room visits from 2009 to 2020, girls is 189% increase.
And that was for self-harm.
Yeah.
What was the amount?
It was 189%.
Wow.
Yeah. Ages 10 to 14, it tripled. Ages 15 to 19 doubled. And that's for girls. For boys, we saw a 48% increase in self-harm.
Self-harm?
For boys.
So my question is, these are horrible numbers that we're hearing. Are they worldwide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, let me say this, okay? And I'd have to go back and look at each of the citations, right? So many of these might have been U.S. statistics, but Jonathan Haidt's a smart guy, right? And so he didn't just look at the U.S., he looked worldwide. Yeah. What were the worldwide trends happening? And one thing in particular is he was able to look at the research where there might be a more remote area. And so maybe they were delayed in receiving internet usage, right? Accessibility. And so he would take the numbers, or the researchers would take the numbers. What were these numbers for mental health issues prior to widespread or availability of the internet? And then what were they afterwards? And that is worldwide, seeing that trend. And, they use the word a hockey spike in research. And what we've seen is after that 2010 to 2012 area, that there's this hockey spike in all these mental health issues. So there's a surge of increase in these mental health issues.
Annette, I have a question that I need to ask, and I think it's, as we're talking about age, the ages samples here, do you see that today more parents are not involved with their children like they were involved when I was being raised, when you were being raised, that I see a baby now today, they're 3 months old and they have a phone in their hand. Is that something that is causing the anxious generation? Because they look, I see a 5-month-old, they already have a little iPhone or phone in their hand. And then as they get older, they forget they have a parent, because I'm seeing more and more, I read more and more, the young people, the respect for their parents is coming to zero, because they don't understand they have a parent. Right. They have a phone. They have somebody tells them what they're going to do. They go to the phone. Is this something that we're looking at?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're mentioning it. And I always want to be compassionate, because I really believe that people are doing their very best, okay? But sometimes we are caught unaware. And you can point throughout history. where we've been caught unaware. But specifically, I just recently saw this research where, and this is amazing to me, but 40% of 2 and 3-year-olds already have an iPad. 40%, okay? Jonathan Haidt not only is going to talk to us and address the issue of these stats, but he's also going to talk about what needs to take place in childhood for us to be healthy, right? And then he's going to compare what needs to take, what historically has taken place, what our bodies, what our brains need, and then what is taking place now. And he starts the book out, and I know you love this analogy about Mars. Would you want to talk a little bit about that analogy?
Sure. I know at the very beginning, he talks about Mars, about, and I think if parents really knew, would they really send their kids to Mars? And I mean by that is by giving them the tools to get there, by giving them internet access, giving them the iPad, giving them the ability to get on all these other social media programs that they get on, because what happens is that we don't realize, but there's a detachment that's starting to grow and we don't realize it. And I don't think parents intentionally do that. They feel like, oh, and I know for some it's be like, oh, my baby's so smart. They know how to they know how to get on the iPad.
Educational, right?
Yeah, they know how to they know how to navigate. But what we're not realizing is that we've given them the ticket already to Mars, because he's saying we're sending them out of this world. And we are creating those paths for them. And really what's happening is we are rewiring their brain.
What's interesting is Jonathan Haidt talks about in the book about how parents are overprotective in the physical world and underprotected in the virtual world. And I thought that was very interesting. One example that he uses is that a parent would say, make sure you eating your vegetables and you get all your nutritions, and then give them a phone virtually with no boundaries and no rules, and allowing anyone into their world unaware.
Right, definitely.
And that is how, some of the children have been tricked into meeting up with somebody, because they're playing Roblox. We don't know who's behind it.
It's
a game.
Roblox
is a little video game. We don't know if an 8-year-old is back there playing, or we don't know if it's a 36-year-old back there playing with an 8-year-old. All we know is that they're playing the game, and then when something happens and we're like, why isn't our kid in bed? We don't realize that we gave them the ticket.
And they can order any sort of drugs dropped in their mailbox.
And they don't know.
Law enforcement and the sheriff, the police officers will tell us, please monitor your children's phone use, because
well, Anita, I want to ask you a question on the juvenile justice system. How do you get to visit with these young people? Do you go to the court? Or do you work with the court closely, or with the attorneys? How do you get to the?
Well,
how do you?
I work with many students that are on probation.
On probation, okay.
Yes, so a lot of them have terms that they have to follow in order to, get off probation. So,
can you explain that to us? So once they commit a crime or they get arrested, tell us a little bit about what the process is.
Well, of course they go to court, and then they're placed on probation, and their parents, also are kind of held accountable, because now it's kind of like, their curfew is 8 p.m. to be indoors. And so the parent has to, make sure that they're inside. If not, they call the probation officer, and that's how so parents get a little bit of help, basically, is what happens.
And then you meet with them on a, is this the court requires them to meet with a counselor and
sometimes they do. And sometimes, I meet with them because I work at a school, or I work somewhere else, and they
call you and you confirm on that. I was just because wondering how the Justice Department got hold of you to make sure that you had the availability to speak with them.
Being in mental health is not just one thing, but it's a collaboration.
It's a collaboration
of many things, and just working not only with we work with a lot of nonprofits as well that we partner up with.
Very good.
So yeah,
and I see you you work with homeless and drug and alcohol counseling, inpatient and outpatient. So you are really, like you say, it's a big. You have a big umbrella.
Yeah, some of those are experiences that we have already gone through, and so currently, right now we're at the school, or at the school.
Not
and,
to say that,
yeah.
you know, in the schools, you will work with some homeless students, right? And some homeless families, but specifically some of that information is past that we've journeyed throughout our careers, you know?
I used to work with a lot of homeless up in the Panhandle that are strictly on the street. And that was, if I wasn't here and still live there, it's probably what I would be doing.
So that's,
very rewarding
the
work.
Panhandle is very rural.
Amarillo.
Okay, so it's the city. So when you say homeless, because I've heard homeless teens, a lot of times they're couch surfing.
Yeah.
Are they literally on the streets?
Well, when I used to work with the homeless, it was homeless adults.
Okay.
And I'd also provide outreach. So going into the shelters, you know, offering mental health services.
Okay.
So yeah.
Now, I want to touch on the topic about medication, because a lot of times when children, you know, with ADHD, they are just a lot of times very common. They're put on medication, and then there's repercussion of the consequences of those medications, because talking to law enforcement, they're seeing that trend and it's not good. So in your experience, how do you feel about children or adolescents being put on medication?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not a doctor, but what I can tell you is that some children need it and some children don't. And I think it's really important to work with a therapist and someone that a psychiatrist that gives a medication, because what happens is if they are just on the medication but they're not learning coping skills, then we're doing a disservice to these kids. You know, because they may need medication for a lifetime and they may not. It just depends on what resources they get, and their body chemistry also plays a large part into it. So.
Okay.
And I want to link real quickly in terms of some research from the anxious generation and ADHD. We find that that those who are ADHD are the most vulnerable when it comes to overuse, when it comes to addiction, in terms of, you know, it could be gaming addiction, it could be gambling addiction, it could be pornography, any of those things, right?
Yeah.
That they are more vulnerable. Also, the research shows that if you take a measurement of ADHD characteristics, symptoms, and then the use of, you know, social media, the digital, because of the dopamine and how it affects our brains, that next measure will show, even for people who are not ADHD, will show an increase in ADHD characteristics or symptoms
because of dopamine.
And so that's really important. We want to get the information out so that kids and families realize, okay, I may be a little bit more vulnerable for this.
Yeah.
You know, so I need to even pay more attention than the person maybe sitting next to me. Also focus. We are seeing, you know, a great impact to focus based on social media, based on digital usage, where, for example, the average teen gets one notification every 5 minutes.
Wow.
Now, I'm sorry, but first of all, they're so attuned to it. And adults, you think about it yourself, you know, if your phone gives you a little ding that you've got a message, I'd totally turn mine off. But how many of you will not pick up that phone if you're watching a show? Many of us will feel compelled to pick up that phone and check it, right? As if it can't wait, you know, 20 minutes. So that constant distraction is creating a black hole of focus and attention. And we're doing ourselves, our society, we're doing our kids such a disservice. So I think that's a very big piece of what's going on. Let me just tell this one. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just going to say before, because I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to make sure that that I gave out the suicide rates for ages.
That's what exactly. You just please suicide.
You
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the word suicide. That is something that is so definite, and I want you all to listen, because it can be in your own home, and I can tell you, I know it from friends and from my family. So that's something y'all need to listen to very closely.
So since 2010, the girls' rate has risen to 167%.
167%.
Boys, 91%.
91%.
And it is a number 2 probable cause of death, for adolescents. And so it's important to get the word out and to let parents know that there is help out there.
Right.
I was going to say one of the favorite lines that you like are the the Grant Halliburton Foundation has some really great resources. And I actually, how we say we partner up with them. They actually will call you back and make sure that the resource works for you if you call them.
Yeah, it's called Here for Texans. It's you can call them, and I love it because you can tell them a little bit about your situation. Tell them if you have insurance, don't have insurance, the geographic area that you live in. So kind of give them your wish list, and they will put someone to help you find some resources. They'll send you an email with 4 or 5 resources. And that'll be within typically 72 hours. And then a week or so later, they'll call back even and ask, how are those resources for you? And try to partner with you, continue to find mental health resources if you need them. So,
yeah. I want to just jump in real quick. The anxious generation is not only the young people, but it's the elders also.
Yes,
because I think we get to this level because the elders suffer just as much as the young people, because we, the young generation, they start forgetting their parents, and the parents are starting putting away.
Such isolation.
So I think a lot to do with, you have the middle, then you have the young here, the youth here, the middle, and then the elder. So I think what's happening is we have an anxious generation on both sides. And the middle is, you have the mom that is in the middle, and they're not paying attention to their child. They're not paying attention to their parents. And what happens? You have elders are committing suicide just as much as the young people today, which is so sad. When you find this situation, I was reading the anxious generation, but I went also to look at the facts of how many elders are committing suicide starting at the age of 60 because they're alone. The loneliness.
Right.
They're not alone. It's lonely. Remember, it's not costing you being alone. It's the loneliness that causes the people, the anxious generation.
It's the feeling.
The feeling.
Emotion.
Lots of hope.
Hope, loss of hope. And I think that's it. We're going to take a minute of a little bit break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you for listening to Alexandra and Friends. Thank you for watching. This is a very important show. We appreciate everybody that's here today. We're going to take 1 minute and go to have our podcast, our wonderful producer give us a little bit of advertisement, and we'll be right back. Well, thank you so very much for taking the time for a little production. We will also want to welcome my co-host, Marshall Johnson.
Hello.
Author, musician, producer, songwriter, and everything else. And by God, before the end, I'm sure that Miss Annette and her are going to sing before we leave.
That's all right. She did good. I'm glad to be here. Hello, ladies. Thank you for coming. This is really good.
It's a great, and I want to tell you, a great mom and a great grandma, and I
love being a grandma.
Yes. Well, Marshall, we're going to go back to this.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the loneliness. I think that Annette wanted to go back into that subject.
Yeah, I think
and then we have some questions from some of our guests also.
Okay.
So I think loneliness is such an important topic. so our late Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, he did a letter to the American people, kind of a call to action. And, he really talks about loneliness and how our society is really struggling with loneliness, and the smartphone, the social media. Our kids are becoming more and more isolated. Our society is becoming more and more isolated. You look, and the average kid is spending, 7 to 8 hours a day on social media, the internet, that sort of thing. And that's, he believes that number, Jonathan Haidt believes that number is even on the low side, because when they ask the question a little different, they even get higher numbers. So our kids are becoming lonelier. And I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about coming here, and I was thinking about being with family and friends. And I was thinking about how we are so blessed with, Rob Bliss and Alexandria and you guys hosting us, and how we feel this sense of community, and how when we are one-to-one or one face-to-face with others, we also get that dopamine hit, right? But the cool thing about that dopamine hit is that it is sustaining. So even after I leave this place today, I'm going to still feel the positive effects of being with you guys, with being in community, with being loved and supported. And yet the dopamine hit that we experience from social media, it causes a craving, because it doesn't last. It's a hit, and then it dissipates. And then we need another hit, and then it dissipates. And so it doesn't have that lasting long effect that face-to-face. And so this is information that we need to know so that we can change our course of action. And so anyway, thank you guys for loving us today, for supporting us. And let's begin to do that more as a community. And let's teach our kids how to be in a relationship with one another.
Right.
And Marshall, I think you can jump in, because you have a program that helps. I think you need to talk a little bit, since we have counseling today. What is the program? But before we go that, there's one lady that had a question. You want to? Somebody had a question here.
I wonder if any of those were from Christian homes, or people that believed in higher being, because I know for me personally, I can't do anything without God.
Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
That's exactly what I taught my kids and my family. So yes, people can get anxious, and I mean I've seen a lot of struggles, in
Of course,
and other friends too. But I always come back to that, and how God's faithful to us. And so even with the loneliness, you talk about dopamine hit,
right?
But when you know that you've got Him in here,
yes.
So I wondered how many of those statistics were from Christian homes or somebody that believed in.
Could you respond to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. A couple of different things. I hope I remember them, because I was having lots of thoughts while you were talking. Okay. But one is, these are cross, section. So this is not isolated people in Christian homes, people in non-Christian homes. This is generic. This is, good research, right? So it would definitely have, and, mental health is not, what's the word?
It has
No relation.
No barriers.
It does.
Yeah.
Right. And yet at the same time, I want to give, the word's not coming to me. I'll just say respect or honor, the point that you're making. And Jonathan Haidt, even though he is a self-described atheist, he even does that in the last chapter of the book, the last part of the book, where he is talking about what are things that we can do to change this, right? Or what are things that help fight or combat the statistics that we're seeing. And one of those is that sacred communion, right? And it might be the awe of nature. It might be, and the Bible talks about how God declares himself throughout the world, throughout nature. Another one is, for example, sacred practices. Maybe it's communion, maybe it's going to church, maybe it's going to synagogue,
maybe it's prayer.
Right. And maybe it's meditation, right?
Yep.
So they're all different types of spiritual practices, and he doesn't designate between them, but he says that spiritual practices help with the mental health crisis, with what we're seeing. Yeah.
Marshall, I think that you can count for that.
I just wanted to ask, I'm just going to just state on what you were speaking earlier about losing the connection. The youth is losing the connection. And I believe that family reunion, going back to the things that we have grown up, getting the kids together, getting the kids to recognize who their aunt is, who their uncles, their best friend, their neighbors. We don't do that anymore. Do you agree?
Yeah.
And that really affects a lot of our youth. Just bringing family together, because a family is very important for our youth of today.
Yes.
And that's why I always speak to my kids, even at the school, because I need this program to be a family affair. That's how you get into these kids' minds. That's how you get into their hearts. So my question to you, Annette and Anita, what is your curriculum regarding the youth? Talking about connection with family or bringing them together with friends and family to help their healing of loneliness.
Right. That's exactly right.
Can you answer something that you do that brings our youth together so they can feel the love? We got to remember the connection is the love. And the children can see if you love them or you don't love them. This is the real love they have, the passion that they carry. It brings the kid in like a magnet. Okay. So tell me on your program, in reference to your youth, or the ones that you have helping or having this a difficult time of mental illness, what are you doing to bring that passion in to let them know you are worthy?
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I think for me, one of the things that I work with, when I first moved to the Dallas area over almost 30 years ago, I worked in Oak Cliff and I worked with some of the hardest kids. And I can tell you that the connection is what works.
Good. I believe
and they're going to sniff you out like a dog. They're going to know if you like them or not. Those kids, they might be gangs. They might be in gangs. They might be doing drugs. But if they know that you're there for them, they're going to be there for you 100%.
I believe that.
Well, Anita, I'm going to go back on this. You're saying gangs and drugs and stuff. What they're doing is they're looking for a connection, because if they cannot have the connection within their family, they're going to look for most gangs. When I did a show on gangs, and what the officers told me was they were looking for someone to guide them, to lead them, so they join a gang. So the same thing is a connection. So we move away from that. We're not connecting, so they're connecting to the phone or to the iPhone. So you're right. It is very important to have, and not only for the young people, but for the elders also.
Oh, absolutely.
But along with the connection of just connecting with them comes trust.
Yes.
Because if you don't have that trust, or they don't have that trust with you, you're not going to have that connection.
Yes, because I feel like also you already have to deal with so much in the home space. What your parents expect, what they want you to be, or who they want you to be. And we got to remember, you have to be who you want to be. Right.
I think that's one of the biggest pillars is first being your authentic self.
That's right.
Especially
acceptance.
Acceptance.
That's
being
right.
your authentic self.
So
that's right.
And others.
That's right.
That's a great question. You're being a parent and a teacher, a music teacher, and bringing children together. I think you can describe that a little bit more than a lot of us.
Oh, well, I'm just grateful to be with ladies who work with the youth and the elders in this situation, because it really takes a lot from your heart to do this. And it has to be a passion. And because you have to grab the people who are out there struggling with this mental illness, you have to come to the levels that they're at. And sometimes we got to bow down to get them to come up.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what you ladies do. And thank you for that, because you're making sure, what can I do to help you get to the status of being well for yourself?
Right.
And that's a personal connection with each person that walks into your room or in your atmosphere. So I was just wanted to say thank you for that. I also have another question. I'm going to go.
May I say something?
Yes,
Like,
ma'am.
I hate it when I go to a workshop or something like that and they talk all about the problem, but don't get to a lot of the solutions.
Right.
And I know you asked us a solution question.
I did. Thank you.
And so I just want, I'm thinking about just some practical things that we can do as families, we can do as a society. So as a family, you know, we can have a movie night, right? Doesn't hardly cost anything.
Yes.
But we can pop some popcorn, we can sit together and we can say to the kids, we're going to say, okay, every Thursday night, we're going to spend at least an hour or 2 hours as a family. And this is our sacred time.
Yes.
You know, we can say, we can have some games, right? Some board games, some card games. How many of you remember growing up and just having a great time, you know, playing card games?
That's right.
That
Red light,
sort of
green
thing.
light.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not
The old maid.
expensive,
Red light,
right?
green light.
The old maid.
That's why the old maid.
And
Jacks.
eating dinner.
Yeah,
Eating
yeah.
dinner together.
Yes.
And your kids,
So my
don't be
grandparents.
surprised when you bring it up and they make all these faces and grunts and all that kind of stuff. And that's okay. But just like somebody was talking earlier about nutrition and you make sure they eat their vegetables or whatever, you're going to persist through that. You're going to let them have their moans and groans, but you're going to go ahead and go, this is our sacred time. You're important to me. We're going to build a foundation together. So we will have Thursday night together and the cell phones will not be a part of it, right? But also there are organizations, and you can think about scouting. Scouting is a tremendous organization that gets kids out in the outdoors. We know that the outdoors is insular in terms of really building, you know, great healthy minds and bodies. We can do youth group. I remember going in when my son was in youth group, and it was a Sunday night. They had youth, and I go in there, and they're all crawling around on their backs, their hands and feet, and they're kicking a soccer ball, right? And they are having the best time, or they're doing leg wrestling. They're just doing all this great stuff, right? So fun, communal type stuff, right? So we can't just take something away that has become so important to them. Their iPads, their internet, their social media, that's their connection right now. It's so you're going to meet resistance, but what are you going to do to fill that void? That's going to be the key. So let's not just take away, but let's fill the void and let's give them, you know, activities, experiences, go camping, go hiking, you know.
I was going to say, with everybody being so busy more now than before, families really need to be intentional.
Yes.
Right.
Intentionally doing those things, because if not, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you heard that, but what our audience member was saying is that we've got to be intentional in planning what we're going to do with our kids and make that, you know, important time. And not just with our kids, but we also want to, they've lost connection with one another. They're not being taught how to relate. It's so easy for them to just dislike or, you know, unfriend, right? And so they're not learning how to make entry into relationships, how to sustain, how to persist, you know, even when things are tough, how to have hard conversations. And so we've got to teach them these social skills of connection. And so what you want to do is you want to begin to invite, you know, some of their best friends, and we're not going to have, you know, iPad, we're not going to have the phone during this time, but I'm going to make sure that you have an opportunity to play spike ball in the backyard or have a great time. So yeah, intentionality.
I think building community, that goes into building community,
right?
Having their friends over your house too.
And I just heard a magic word, unfriend. That's become a very big magic word. You know, when in the world, as we were kids growing up, we got in an argument, but we were there. But now you unfriend somebody, you don't even know them. You unfriend them on the computer, and that's the end of a friendship. And I'm going like,
that's really true.
What? They don't even know the person, but they unfriend them because they didn't like the word the lipstick was, or you know. But that's where we are today. So we unfriend the people, so we don't have a relationship with people anymore. So when I'm talking, if I don't like you, I'm going to go and unfriend you, and that's the last thing. And it becomes sort of like the kids don't have a relationship.
Right.
They don't have they don't have a neighbor. They don't have somebody to go to lunch with. I remember we used to go hamburgers and listen to the music and dance. And I think that Marshall, I've got to say something, because Marshall is in the business of child.
I do youth.
And she has a program, which I think is very important. I think programs like that we need to. We have the Rotary, we have the Girl Scouts, we have the Boy Scouts. All these things I think are important, part of our life, and I think it's important to bring them in and not unfriend them.
Right.
Because the word unfriend, it just it just a relation. There's no relationship to family. I've known Marshall for a long, long time, and her family. I don't have brothers. I don't have sisters. I don't have my parents. I'm the one left in my family. But I have friends all over the world, and thank God, I'm very, very grateful for that. But I envy Marshall a lot because where are you going? I'm having my parents, my sister, my 12 brothers, my sisters, and they all get together all the time, and it's so much fun. And you're right. You got to bring the families together, and that is important. And I think when you have another problem we have is we have so many divorced parents, and we have blended families that they really don't know who they belong to. What are your thoughts on that, Miss Annette?
So I'm thinking, so you're talking about how we are having divorce. So we know that divorce is a part of our society at this point, and it, of course, is a tough thing. It's a tough thing for the parents. It's especially a tough thing for the family. My parents divorced when I was a sophomore in college, but I will give a shout out to my parents because, and they separated when I was, let's say, probably 11th grade, something like that. But my parents, every birthday, every Christmas, they made sure that they were both. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional.
That's okay.
That's okay.
That's
We want to hear that.
They made sure that they were both there if they had remarried or not remarried or whatever the situation was. They put aside everything else to be there for us and to value and honor that family time. And so we benefited tremendously from that. Now, I realize, and I always try to use a lens of compassion and open-mindedness. That's not everybody's situation. Not everybody can do that, because of different things, right? But many of us can. And it goes back to that intentionality that was spoken about earlier, that if we purpose to put our kids first, then we can grow up a little bit and we can be respectful and kind and occupy the same space, but yet, put our kids first. And so I think that's a big part of that, right?
Wow. I have a question.
Yeah.
In reference to the struggles that the adults have today with loneliness, and you had just stated that we're going to place the kids first. What can you share to the listeners about the elders who are dealing